Leading us in the pledge is a good friend of mine, the chairman of the Black Caucus, who helped organize our most recent historic rally in the Bronx for President Trump. Everyone give a warm round of applause to Adam Solis Jr., everybody.
Good evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we have a great program for you all this evening, but we're going to start, as always, with a few quick and speedy club announcements. If you are not a member of the club, I know we have a lot of new faces here in the audience. Highly encourage you to join. It's only $75 a year. We have tons of great events, great socials, do a lot of activism across the city. We're doing a lot of work helping President Trump here in the Empire State, believe it or not. I guess they're making a play for it. So we're very excited to hear that. We're going to be doing a ton of, let's round of applause. Empire State turning red. To that end, we are going to be doing a ton of phone banking not just for potential voters here in New York, but across the country, particularly in swing states. If you are interested in that, definitely head to our website, email our campaigns team, campaigns@nyyrc.com. We also have the co-chairman of that committee here tonight, Mario. I don't know where he is right now, but he's here somewhere. We'll make an introduction, and he can help you get all situated for some potential phone banking. And of course, in addition to the phone banking operation, we are always looking for people to help with the club, our various committees, various activities. In particular, we are also on the lookout for a new membership chairman or chairwoman. Our current chairwoman is expecting her first child this September. Yes, awesome. We love that. So she will unfortunately have to step away, but if you are interested in the membership committee, it's a great committee to be involved in. We will be doing interviews. And in addition to that, sadly, this event will be the last event of our great speakers chairwoman, Haley Prudenti. Haley, where are you? Haley's been with us for a little over a year. And sadly, she decided to leave the blue state of New York for the even bluer state of Colorado, right? Colorado. So we're going to be losing you. Maybe you'll make it slightly redder, but it's always unfortunate. You've been doing an amazing job this past year. We're very happy you're part of the team. Setting up an amazing event. We have a sold-out crowd. I'm sorry we don't have enough chairs. You can complain to Jane about that. She's in the pink up front. But we'll buy more chairs. It's in the budget. But if you are interested in helping with the speakers committee, going out of the summer, we tend to do a lot more speaker events when there's more people in town. Obviously, it's a little hot and disgusting here in New York recently, but we are hoping to have a great lineup of speakers leading up into December, which is going to be our biggest event of all. Have to make the plug. The NYYRC's 112th annual gala. We've been pretty consistent with that over 100 years. We're going to keep going strong with it. It will again this year be at Cipriani Wall Street, downtown, largest ballroom, I think in the country, beautiful. We hosted President Trump this past December. I'm sure many of you remember it. It's a beautiful black tie affair. I highly encourage you to get tickets now. They are selling faster than last year. We don't even have a speaker announced yet, but we will be naming several soon. Always big surprises with our speakers at the gala. So definitely get a ticket now while they are on early bird. If you have any questions about that, you can speak to Brent Morden, our gala chairman. He's in the back. Here you go, Brent. I saw you, so I gave you a shout out. And in addition to that, we have a few upcoming events. Sticking with Brent, who previously ran our Arts Caucus, we are going to be hosting a Thursday Arts Caucus event called The Left's War on Beauty. That will be this Thursday. It's already close to 100 people have purchased tickets. If you're interested, definitely get those online. It starts at 7 o'clock. The location is downtown. Can't give the location out for security reasons, but if you get a ticket, you will be notified. That's our most the closest event. Thereafter, we're going to be having our July social. It's going to be in honor of our soon-to-be new president, Kamala Harris. It is coconut-themed, so we encourage you all to come out for our Tiki social on July 30th. Coconut drinks, Hawaiian shirts, and a lot of very awkward and strange speeches in honor of our president now. I don't even know who is president, but we'll figure that out soon. Moving forward, we have an August 1st Cyborg Theocracy event. It's a very weird event, I know, but if you're into weird events with artsy people talking about edgy concepts, that'll be August 1st. That'll also be downtown. And then we are having an August 25th paintball match upstate with the Veterans Caucus. You can get shot at by a bunch of veterans who maybe are a little out of shape, but are still good with their trigger fingers. And most importantly, because one of our speakers here this evening, who I'm not going to be introducing, but has been instrumental in helping raise a ton of money for a great organization, Tunnels to Towers, Raheem Kassam had worked with us in the past. With his team, raised $20,000 on the NYYRC Raheem Kassam team for Tunnels to Towers. He's pouring himself a drink. I think he deserves it. But we will be forming another NYYRC team for Tunnels to Towers on September 29th. If you're interested in getting involved with that, you can talk to our philanthropy committee chairman, Jude Sumfun. Jude in the back. Talk to him. We'll get you gear, merch, and we'll get you on the team and hopefully get you guys in shape. So with that said, I think we've announced everything. Oh, we are relaunching our Italian caucus by popular demand. Greg is here. Greg, there you are, Italian caucus. You're going to do a cannoli social or something in about a month or so. We love our stereotypes. So if you're interested, talk to Greg. And I also want to give a shout out to our new Arts Caucus Chairman, Tristan. There he is. You can talk to him. Great stuff to come. Last but not least, we are doing a voter drive series. We started that in the Bronx. We're going all over the 5 boroughs, doing a bunch of big voter drive events. Talk to Mario, who's also organizing the Trump phone banking. If you're interested in volunteering, registering new Republican voters, getting new people out to vote, speak to him. We're doing stuff in Brooklyn and Queens, in the city. You'll find something. It'll be good. But with that said, that's all the boring announcements. We're going to have a great lineup of speakers tonight. Just to make a few things clear, because we have so many speakers, they're all going to give their speeches first. At the end, we're going to do a communal Q&A session. They'll all be sitting and taking questions. When you ask a question, please direct it specifically to one of the speakers. Unless it happens to be for anyone, we'll deal with that on a case-by-case basis. And also, if you're interested in purchasing a copy of Jack Posobiec's book, they are on sale in the back, either cash or card. He will be signing those books as well. And then also, after tonight's event, I encourage everyone to go upstairs, right through that door. You're going to use the stairs, but not through that door. Go to the 2M Pub for food, drink, run up the bar tab. We got to get some money in the WNRC coffers, so let's get them some, buy some good steak, buy some good food. We will be up there with the speakers. With all that said, I want to introduce a good friend of mine, the recording secretary of the club, to introduce our first speaker for this evening, Alexander Ben Shmuel Zieg. Alex, get over here. Dressed very nicely.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alex Zieg, and I have to say, considering that I'm the recording secretary and the general counsel, I didn't expect to be standing here tonight, but I will say that... You guys hear me back there? Okay. Tonight I have the great honor and privilege of introducing what I would consider to be the OG conservative populist of our movement. The former editor-in-chief of Breitbart News London, the chief advisor to Mr. Brexit himself, Nigel Farage, recently Nigel Farage MP, an accomplished author, and currently the editor-in-chief of the National Pulse. I will like to underscore, the outlet has never had to issue a correction or a retraction, nor has ever been accused of falsifying any stories or sources, unlike the large corporate media outlets that we all consume. In fact, what I would like to do is I would like all of you to take out your phones right now. Do it. Take out your phones. Everyone in the back, come here. Come to the front, fill in these seats. Take out your phones, pull up the app, and download the National Pulse. You will not regret it. What I will say to you is, Raheem told me, he said, Shmuley, I promise you, this app is a game changer. And guess what? He wasn't right. And yes, he gave me a very stereotypical ethnic nickname, not realizing it's actually my middle name. He also makes fun of my skinny ties, but I digress. The slogan for the National Pulse is radically independent. It comes from the fact that the National Pulse does not take big dollar donations. It does not rely on billionaires or corporations. It actively refuses political campaign involvement. And again, this is what corporate media does. Now, without further ado, I would like all of you to stand up, and give a round of applause to my dear friend, London's finest, Raheem Kassam.
Thank you, Shmuley. It's very funny. When I first met Alex, I just looked at him and we had a chat, and I said to him, you know what, I'm going to call you Shmuley. And he said, wow, that is deeply, deeply anti-Semitic. And about 2 weeks later, he said to me, listen, I got to tell you the truth. I said, what is it? He said, my middle name is actually Shmuel. So, as I always like to say, nailed it. But thank you for that very kind introduction, and thank you for plugging the National Pulse app. It is something that we are incredibly pleased with. We often beat the corporate media to the best and biggest news stories of the day, and you get them without a globalist tinge. So if you will join us, it is free. We provide that to you as a free service. I got to tell you, I bloody love this club. I really do. Every single time I get to be invited to this club, I drop everything, no matter where I am. And in the last couple of weeks, it's been London, it's been Clacton, it's been Paris, and it's been Milwaukee. All the best parts of the world. And when Gavin extended the invite for me to come here and give you guys a briefing on what I'm seeing out in the real world right now, out in the nationalist, populist fight against the globalists, again, I dropped everything to come and speak with you guys. So I'm grateful that so many of you are here. I'm grateful to speak on the same platform as my good pal, Jack Posobiec. I do use promo code Tanya though, so. But as much as we enjoy each other's company, as much as we enjoy sharing a drink, sharing a laugh, sharing a dinner together, there are 104 days left until November the 5th. And it's your election day, or should I call it your snap election day. Except perhaps instead of like in the UK and in France, it's not a snap election date, but it's a snap candidate that we're facing now. And I said something on a podcast 2 weeks ago when I came back from the UK and France, and I want to read this to you as a quote, quoting myself, of course, in true Raheem fashion. A great man once said, I said, it's all very important to what happens in November. I think you have to be very careful here, especially of the Biden stuff, because you had a snap election in the UK and you had a snap election in France. That's the theme. That's the globalist theme for 2024, and I just would not be surprised, do not put it past them, to watch Joe Biden die on his feet in front of the American public. Maybe not literally in front, but literally to pass away a week, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks before an election, and boom, then boom, it's a snap election. It's a snap candidate. It's somebody different, and then you have the sympathy vote. Go and look at that. Go and look at the Goldwater blowout again if you need reminding of that. The sympathy vote can take enough away from the moderates and the independents and give a lot to the people who are going to stay at home and not vote for Biden. Suddenly they think, oh, it's a different situation. Think about that. That was 2 weeks ago. And think about all the things that we've been through in the last 2 weeks alone. You know, another great man used to love to come to this club, and I'm sure he'll be back at this club again. In fact, I'm going to lobby for it to be the first place he comes back again when he is released from jail in Danbury, Connecticut. That man is Stephen K. Bannon, one of my oldest standing friends and mentors in this movement. There are 104 days left until November the 5th. And one of the last times that I actually stood in this building amongst some of you, I'm sure you remember it, was when Stephen K. Bannon and I came up here. I think we were up at the solarium, because I insisted that I had to be able to smoke all night. It's no smoking up there now, by the way. Jay, just FYI, you know, I had to let people know. You can't do that anymore. Very naughty. I definitely didn't just go and do it. But we went up there and Steve and I gave a presentation. Was anybody there at the time? Gavin, obviously, was there. Here we are. You know, how many years later? And we said, here's how they're going to steal the election in 2020. Here's the Transition Integrity Project. Here's how they're actually walking us through the mail-in ballots, the drop boxes, COVID, all of the excuses. We warned you in advance it was going to happen. We warned you in advance that you would get a Manchurian candidate and they would weekend at Bernie's style install him for the next 4 years. Everything we warned about has come to pass. And the red wave complacents, and we all know them, and maybe there are some in this room, who should have been eating crow after that moment, instead turned on Donald Trump and turned on the MAGA movement. And we all know people like that too. Fast forward 4 years, and guess who's back? The same complacents, the same rhinos, the same never or hardly ever Trumpers who suddenly saw the light. What was it? Was it the indictments? Some of them came back for the indictments. And when the lawfare crooks in this city and in this state came after Donald Trump. And let's not forget a big shout out to the ones who only came back in the last 10 days. Just think about it. When the unthinkable almost happened. Just 10 days ago in Butler, Pennsylvania, when the 45th President of the United States took a bullet to the head by somebody who was radicalized by the corporate mainstream media and by the globalist left, and indeed by the state, by your country, by your government. My warning today, just like when we did the warnings of the Transition Integrity Project, my warning today, bless you, is to refuse to heed the complacents. We all feel quite good about this cackling moron that the Democrats are going to end up with, but you have to understand, the only reason they feel assured in putting a cackling moron in place is the same reason they felt assured with putting a cadaver in place in 2020. Because they don't intend to play by the book. So we can be 2 points up in the polls. We could be 5 points up in the polls. We could be 10 points up in the polls. Do not heed the complacents. Because, number one, you know that if they could fool us into complacency, and they did in 2020, then they would do it again, and they are again, I guarantee you this. I live it and breathe it every single day for my sins, and in fact, for all of you on Capitol Hill. I have to live there, unfortunately. And because they've shown us over the past 8 years, 10 years, some would say, some would go back even further, that you can put nothing past them. The hoaxes, the lawfare, an illegitimate president of an illegitimate regime that has put their political opponents behind bars. Our friends, Dr. Peter Navarro, our friend, Stephen K. Bannon, a long-standing supporter, one of the greatest supporters of this club, is currently behind bars. So Gavin, you're next. But I'm also not just here. I don't want to just give you this little roundup and this little rah-rah about what you need to do in November, your duty in November. So many of you I know are already putting your shoulders to the wheel. So many of you actually show me every day how it's done. This club, its members, its leadership, Vish Bora, Gavin Wax, Alex, Chelsea, Nathan, the whole crowd. You guys inspire us. And you guys inspire us to come here and deliver to you the goods about what's really going on in that swamp. But I'm also here just briefly to actually bring you some maybe what you might find surprising good tidings from what I saw happen in the UK and in France. And I know a lot of the media coverage of it was, oh, Marine Le Pen got blown out, what an embarrassment, the left took that election, look at how well democracy works. I remember Emily Maitlis of the BBC celebrating in the immediate aftermath of what they called the defeat of Marine Le Pen. And she was celebrating until somebody said to her, you know who Jean-Luc Mélenchon is, don't you? And you know what the communists in Paris stand for, don't you? And she suddenly started deleting many of her tweets and said, oh my goodness, I didn't actually know. This is who these people are. You know, weapons-grade morons. But the achievement that Nigel Farage, another great supporter of this room and this club, the achievements he made in landing 5 members of parliament is actually unprecedented for the populist right in the United Kingdom. It is, as he likes to call it, a bridgehead into that parliament, an ability for them to go in there every day and represent their constituents as 645 other members of parliament flat out refuse to do every day. Oh, they're more than happy to fight on behalf of the World Economic Forum. They're more than happy to fight on behalf of the big corporates, the big banks, big media, big pharma. But so rarely do they fight on behalf. And I was so pleased to see today Nigel Farage gave his maiden speech in Parliament, and what was the first thing he talked about? His constituents in Clacton. A wonderful little, if you ever get a chance, a wonderful little seaside town in the east of England. Has it seen better days? Yes. Some of us have all seen better days. But £1.55 for a pint of Ruddles at the pub on the seafront, I'll tell you, you can have a wonderful time there. But that's the difference between us and them. And I don't invent this us and them narrative. You hear it all the time coming from the left. This is what sets us apart. This is what sets us apart. I'll tell you what sets us apart. Is a love for our neighbor and a love for our countries. That is what sets us apart. And what happened at 10 o'clock that evening when exit polls came down? I was standing there. Stuart, Nigel Farage's official photographer, is in this room. Give him a round of applause. Possibly the man with the hardest job in politics, which is trying to photograph Nigel Farage without a pint in his hand. But what did we see that night as the exit polls came out in Clacton, Stuart? The Reform Party is projected to win 13 seats in this parliament. And of course, over the course of the night, we found out that actually it was probably going to be more like 4. And by the next morning, we realized we had gotten 5. Whose expectations were they that were not met? It wasn't the Reform Party's expectations, it wasn't Reform voters' expectations, it wasn't Nigel Farage's expectations. These were confected expectations built up by the corporate media in order to depress us all. In order for us to think, oh my goodness, we're losing again. I don't see it that way at all. 5 members of Parliament is not nothing. And 5 members of Parliament gives him the opportunity to go in there and to look at the Conservative Party, the feckless rhino Conservative Party, in the face and say, 5 will become 50 in the next Parliament. 50 will become 500 if the populist nationalists get their way. And that, my friends, is the way to do it. It is the way to do it. And he has always led the way. And it's the same thing in France. Who raised the expectations for Marine Le Pen, for the Rassemblement National? Did they hope that they could do better? Of course, we all hope that. But were they the ones going out there and saying, oh, well, we're obviously going to be the majority, we're obviously going to be governing, we're obviously going to get the prime ministership? No. Once again, it was the media, the polling companies, the globalist left, raising the expectations falsely. And I have to say something about that. She added another 50 deputies to the French Assembly. It's huge, by the way. And she is the largest single party in the French Assembly. The rest is all coalitions. It's all cobbled together. You get the Greens coming together with the Islamists, coming together with the Communists, coming together with Emmanuel, spawn of Satan, Macron. And I know I've got to wrap up very shortly, but I'd love to tell you a little story about when I first ever met Emmanuel Macron. And nobody had ever heard of him at the time. And I kept reading little nuggets about him in Politico, and I thought to myself, somebody is planting these stories here. Well, I was having lunch one day at an old restaurant no longer there in Westminster called Shepherd's with none other than Nigel Farage, and I told him over the lunch, I said, this Macron guy, they're setting him up. He's the Antichrist. They're setting him up to be the next president of France. Well, obviously, we had what we call a PFL, a proper Farage lunch. And I trot back down the street, and I'm walking past this Indian-French restaurant called the Cinnamon Club, and down the steps towards me comes this diminutive little man. And you know when Raheem is calling you diminutive, you've got real problems, okay? Comes walking down the steps towards me. He's got a tiny little entourage, and I tap the little man on his shoulder. And he turns around and he goes, yes, you know, how the French do. And I said, you're Emmanuel Macron. He goes, yes, yes, thank you, thank you. Sorry to any French in there. Actually, I'm not sorry to any French in there. Do I have to rap? I'm just getting started. And I said, I was just at lunch with Nigel Farage. And he takes a step back and he goes, oh. I said, I told him I think you're going to be the next president of France. He says, oh, thank you very much, thank you very much. I said, hold on. I didn't say it was going to be a good thing. And literally he turned on his heel and marched off in the other direction. Ladies and gentlemen, I am always, always honored to be amongst such amazing friends as I know I have in this room. And I'm always, always honored that you would host me here, and Gavin, that you would have us here at the New York Young Republican Club. And if I could paraphrase from 10 days ago, the final message that I want to leave you today, if I can actually just quote the 45th President of the United States, and I want you to all do it with me, ladies and gentlemen. Fight, fight, fight. Thank you.
I want to welcome up another friend of mine to introduce this gentleman. You obviously, many of you may know him. He took over the club with myself and Nathan Berger 5 years ago now. The executive secretary of the club, you may know him as a producer from Steve Bannon's War Room. You may know him as someone who's worked very closely with Congressman Matt Gaetz. Everyone give a warm welcome to Fishborough, everybody.
You know, 5 years ago when we took over this club, one of the first events that we had here was actually with Raheem Kassam and Jack Posobiec. Even back then, in 2019, they had tremendous faith in this club. Right upstairs in the Grand Salon, we hosted them. And 5 years later, look how far we've come. You know, I want to quote Vladimir Lenin right now because I, like my mentor, Stephen K. Bannon, I'm also a Leninist, so I wanted to make sure I get this quote right. There are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. And we are living in those times right now. We are living in those moments. Every moment matters. Every single bit, every single move that is being made out there is going to echo for eternity. And we're living through that moment right now. Not only are we living through it, but we can affect it. Every single person in this room has the power to affect it. And as we're going through such crazy, chaotic times, we need to be able to keep up
with everything that we're being flooded with, all the information that we're flooded with, that's coming faster than a New York minute. Right now, every single second, there's something new, something powerful, something that makes us pivot, something that makes us think, something that makes us act. It's happening right now. I mean, just think about it. We're not even sure if our president is still alive. Has anybody actually seen from him or heard from him? Anyone at all? I mean, we're in the phase now that we're gonna find out that Joe Biden woke up with a pillow over his face like Antonin Scalia. Someone needs to check if the Biden staff has recently used promo code POSO for a MyPillow. He's getting a good night's rest. That's what everybody tells me. He's getting a good night's rest. So without further ado, I am proud and honored to introduce a good friend, but somebody who makes sure that this movement, every single one of us who has the heart to fight, to act, is up to date on every single bit of information that we need and the information and the direction that we need to act. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce my good friend, the intel officer of the New Right, Jack Posobiec.
I didn't know if this is like one of those Joe Biden staircases where, you know, it's like, it's all gimmicked up and you got to be really careful when you're going up and all. You know, it's funny, by the way, speaking here after Raheem, thank you, by the way. Thank you, Vish. Thank you, everybody, for having us. So 5 years ago, was there any, by the way, let's show of hands. Was there anyone here 5 years ago who was at that event with me and Raheem? Or is this like all new faces? Wow. That right there is a testament to the influence and the excellence of Gavin Wax, of Vish, of Nathan, of everybody on the board of this team. Give yourselves a round of applause. That's incredible. You have grown and reconstructed and reconstituted this club into not just the best club in the city, but the best Young Republicans club in the entire country. And I'll even go a step further than that because it's actually the best Republican club, period, in the country, and everyone knows that. So anyway, I was going to say, though, that five years ago, on that fateful night that everyone's talking about that was just upstairs here, so I'm on the train from Amtrak, and even back, may have been pre-CrowdStrike, but we don't know. And so I'm coming up, this is back when I was still with One America News, and I was coming up, one of our producers is right here in the front, say hi, Justine. And of course, so Amtrak breaks down coming up from DC at Newark Airport. And the train is stuck, and they say the train's going to be unstuck, the tunnel's going to open, the tracks are fine. They said the tracks were on fire or something. It was some crazy situation. I don't know. Maybe one of your homeless people was doing something fun. And so we're sitting there, and Gavin's furiously texting me because he's only just really come over the party. And everyone's saying that the speaker series is, it's really setting the stage for what the rest of his role is going to be. And obviously you see where it's turned out. And so we're sitting there, and we had a couple of speakers. It was Borelli, right? So it was me, Raheem, and Borelli. And so Borelli goes, he gets up and he speaks and he's done. And then Raheem gets up and he speaks and he's done. And he's like, Posobiec, where are you? We need you here, Posobiec. We need you immediately. And I'm like, well, wait. And I was like, no, Raheem, I'm trying to get an Uber or something. He's like, I want to go to the bar. And I'm like, stretch. Because I'm sitting there and now I'm in the Uber and now I'm in the tunnel. I'm trying to get there. And of course, everyone knows you don't want to be the person standing between Raheem Kassam and the bar. So as it turns out, this actually was Raheem Kassam's longest speech in his entire career. He spoke for almost 90 minutes. He can't remember a single second of what he said. You got all the stories. He definitely told the Macron story. I think he had to stretch so long, he actually told the Macron story twice that night, ladies and gentlemen. And that was maybe after a few drinks came in. Of course, you were drinking on the show the other day as well, as a matter of fact, as I recall.
They never came back, those ones who were here.
Yeah, and so those are the people, and we understand the people who are there. Now you see, that's why none of them ever came back. But no, folks, it's been a whirlwind of a couple of weeks. Not for me personally. Look, the success of the book. Tony Lyons is here, by the way, the publisher of Skyhorse. So, by the way, Tony, raise your hand real quick. So, for all the budding authors, if you want to pitch a book, now's your chance. Shoot your shot. He's here, folks. Get there. That's the guy. Pitch him up. Enjoy, Tony. You'll have a great time. But he's been amazing. We had no idea that we'd hit. Number one, of course, the New York Times is being the New York Times. But as we stand right now, when you go by Publishers Weekly, that actually goes off of a crazy concept called sales of books in the country, we are currently the #1 book in America. And it's a testament not. It's not about me. It's not about the quality of the book. It's not about marketing or calling it Unhumans and having the SPLC and Media Matters and the Biden campaign, or I should say the late Biden campaign, all attacking us and giving us millions of dollars in free advertising. Thanks so much, by the way, guys. But I will say this: it's a testament to the times that we live in, because when we first put pen to paper, we had no idea that the man who wrote the foreword to the book, Stephen K. Bannon, would himself become a victim of the very forces of which we were writing in the book. Because, of course, I wanted Steve Bannon to be on the show, on the War Room, because I got books to sell. And I want to be on there and having Stephen K. Bannon promoting the book. But, of course, the federal government wouldn't allow that. Because the day before the book was about to release, Stephen K. Bannon reported to the federal gulags. And so when I get with these reviewers and I get these left-wingers saying, oh, it's not happening, it's not happening, it's not happening, and I say, well, let me just see. I've got a friend that's sitting in the gulag. The guy who wrote the foreword to the book has already succumbed to that which was happening. Little did we know that within 4 days after the book was released, there would be an assassination attempt on Donald J. Trump, the once and future President of the United States of America. And on a bloody field in Butler, Pennsylvania, we came half an inch away from losing everything. Happened to do a little podcast last night that you guys may have seen with this guy in a cabin up in Maine named Tucker Carlson. Thank you. And I'll give you a little bit of the backstory on that, just very briefly, that we were originally scheduled to do it in August, and we had it all planned out, and we had a whole trip. And when the assassination attempt took place, his team got in contact with me. We were at the RNC together, and they said, look, we want Posobiec up immediately because we need to go through what was happening. And little did we know that as I was literally driving up to the cabin on Sunday, that we would get the news that Joe Biden was dropping out as President of the United States and would no longer be running. And of course, we're up in Maine, and it's like surrounded by pine trees, and there's no service. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Thanks, Tucker. Thanks so much. And so this podcast was not planned. This was never supposed to happen, or at least from our perspective, was never supposed to happen. But perhaps in some way, it was supposed to happen. But Tucker asked me that very question during the show, and that's not scripted or anything. The two of us sitting there with microphones, and he said, "What would have happened if that bullet had been a half an inch to the right. And I do think we need to think about that. And I think we all need to think about that. And I answered without hesitation, civil war. It would have been civil war. And there's no question that, not immediately, of course, but the machinations would have turned to that. And this is what we must work to prevent. This is what we must not allow to happen. Because I will tell you, as sure as I'm standing here before you, that I believe in the bottom of my heart and the depths of my soul that it was the Holy Spirit and the hand of God that intervened and saved Donald Trump's life that day at 6:11 p.m. in that bloody field in Pennsylvania. And there is no one who can tell me otherwise. And he said as much at the RNC, which, if you remember this moment, that he was saying, "I'm not supposed to be here tonight. I'm not supposed to be here tonight." And the crowd starts responding, "Yes, you are. Yes, you are." It's a very powerful moment. It's a riveting moment. I was sitting in the crowd. And then he corrects the crowd. I've never seen Donald Trump do something like this. He did something that I've never seen him do before. He corrected his own audience. He said, "You're wrong. I'm not supposed to be here. But something has changed." And you could tell, I believe that something changed in him as well. And that, look, we all know Donald Trump isn't necessarily the most theologically inclined guy. And I say that in a room full of New Yorkers. That's not an insult. But look, like it's been a part of his life, but you can tell that, you know, I think he found God in that moment. I think he felt the hand of God in that moment. I really did. And when you see those stunning images that we have of him with his head bowed, and there's an image you've never seen before, right? Of Donald Trump. We've all seen Donald Trump, the warrior, the fighter. You, of course, see it in that moment with his response, where he's, you know, evocative of all of the great bouts that he sat at ringside for, whether it be in boxing or wrestling or MMA, right? The bloody fighter with his hand raised high. And while we all look at that photo, there's another photo that I think is perhaps even more touching and more influential and more important. And that's the photo of Donald Trump as you've never seen him, with his head bowed. You've never seen Donald Trump with his head bowed before. And with his hands clasped in front of him, Donald Trump at prayer. Donald Trump kissed on the ear by death itself. And Donald Trump responding in a way, and Sun Tzu writes about this. Sun Tzu wrote 2,000 years ago that when you bring a man to the brink of death, that is the moment when you truly meet the man inside. And Donald Trump responded with the voice of a lion roaring up forth, "Fight, fight, fight." That's who Donald Trump is. That's what he's about. I'm sorry, Maggie Haberman, and I'm sorry to the New York Times, and I'm sorry to CNN. He's not a con man. It's not all an act. It's not all just for show. It's not all reality TV. Donald J. Trump is the real deal. He's always been the real deal, and the people in this audience know that he's the real deal. And so look, you know, I say I wish we weren't here tonight in some ways. It's a fantastic turnout. I love it. But in a sense, I do wish we weren't here tonight, because I want to be home with my kids are down at Wildwood right now. They're on the beach. They're going on the boardwalk. They're having a great time. In my head, my wife's here tonight with me though, supporting me. She's got my back. And in my head, that's where I want to be. But Tanya Tay, who already escaped one communist country from the Soviet Union, I don't want her to have to escape another one when the United States goes communist. No, we're not going to let it happen, because I'm going to go to the beach with my children, and we're going to do so in safety, in prosperity, and then afterwards we're going to be able to come to the great cities like New York City, like Philadelphia. We are going to restore these cities to their rightful greatness and rightful place among history, like New York City is. And I'm just going to say it, and I say this as a Philly kid. New York City is the greatest city on the face of the planet, and it must be restored. It must be restored to its place in the rightful order. It is what it is. What can I say? Gavin earlier was saying that we're like the sixth borough. Like, okay, we'll see. We'll see. But look, folks, they put Kamala Harris up there. But let me tell you something. It's not, and people will say to you, Kamala Harris is a weak candidate. This is true. She's a very weak candidate. But you're not just against Kamala Harris now. The Obamas have gotten behind Kamala Harris, okay? Hollywood has gotten behind Kamala Harris directly. The entire establishment, the entire Leviathan has gotten behind Kamala Harris. That is who we are up against. But I tell you this right now, and I believe it as much as I believe what I believe about 6/11. And the Washington Post, of course, was attacking me for saying, oh, well, because I said that Donald Trump was shot at 6:11 p.m. and Ephesians 6:11 is the passage about the armor of God. And they were attacking me and saying, oh, how dare Jack Posobiec say this? He's worshiping Donald Trump. And Bill Maher is saying that we're all cultists worshiping Donald Trump. And meanwhile, I turned around and I say, hey guys, chestnut checkers, I just got all you godless commies to admit what Ephesians 6:11 says. Because we stay winning, because we stay winning. That's what we're up against, but they would not have done this. They would not have done this if they were in a position of power. They would not have had to pull the Kamala switcheroo. They would not have had to put coconuts in there if they thought they were winning. There's no, by the way, they started the coconuts thing. All right, that's totally fine. We could say that. It's fair play. This is not, because you know that's going to be what SPLC and everybody is saying, oh, you're talking coconut. Sorry, they started the coconut thing, not me, so I would say it. That when they would not have pushed Joe Biden out of the coconut tree and brought Kamala Harris in there if they thought they were winning. Let me tell you folks, we're in a fight. We're in a 15-week shootout, but we are winning, and we are going to continue winning, but that is why we must fight. That's why we must work with the patriots like Scott Pressler, work with the patriots like Charlie Kirk and Turning Point Action and Cliff Mooney and everyone out there across the states. We are going to bank ballots. We are going to do the work. We are going to get in there, and let me tell you something. I cannot wait for the evening of November 5th, 2024, because I'm going to be there, you are going to be there the same way that I was 8 years ago. 8 years ago, right up the street here on that night in November 2016. I don't care if it's 2 in the morning, I don't care if it's 3 in the morning, and it was 3 in the morning, by the way. It was 3 in the morning when Donald J. Trump took the stage and declared that he had won the presidency of the United States of America. Folks, we are going to make it happen again. The people in this room will make it happen again. Our families will be saved. This country will not go communist. God bless you. Thank you.
Again, another round of applause for our favorite Polish-American commentator, Jack Posobiec. You can buy his book at the back. You can see Haley holding it up. We are taking cash, card, anything, euros maybe, I don't know, cigarettes, drinks. It's a tough economy. We will barter. Let's get these books sold. It is a bestseller, by the way. Don't let the fake New York Times let you think what a bestseller is. Jack, you made USA Today. What other bestseller lists? USA?
Publisher Weekly #1.
Publisher Weekly #1. It's a rigged system, but he's beating all the odds. He's getting this book out. It's a great thing. We'd love to see it, folks. With that, we are going to be now moving into our final speaker of the evening, and then after we will be doing a group Q&A, and then we'll go upstairs for food and drink. I know there's a lot of people standing back there. There are seats if you want to just, shimmy and move, do whatever you can. We'll fill them out. With that said, I want to introduce my vice president of the club, who's been instrumental in running this organization, growing this organization. He's been with Vish and myself since the very beginning. I routinely say that he is a Mr. Mensa candidate. Very smart guy, very smart. I want to welcome up my good friend, Mr. Nathan Berger, to introduce our last speaker this evening. Nathan.
Good evening. I think it's fitting. We've heard a lot about what's going on in the United States and the progress towards communism, the globalists coming to take us over. And our final speaker of the evening, Dr. Ernst Roets, joins us from a country that has been suffering mightily for the past 30 years under the communist boot. Dr. Roets is a representative of the Afrikaner community. He's the executive director of the Afrikaner Foundation, a newly established group that represents the interests of the Afrikaner minorities and really all South Africans who suffer equally, in some cases, under the regime that's currently in power there. It's important to recognize that today in South Africa, the so-called Rainbow Nation, bastion of democracy, but there are far more race-based discriminatory laws in place than there ever were under the National Party. And that's something that we don't hear about, and that's a shame, because these laws directly impact the situation there, directly impact lives, and they lead to the ongoing genocide of a substantial community there that continues to shrink due to outmigration as a result of these economic challenges. South Africa has affirmative action on steroids, obscene requirements for companies, for establishing companies, for maintaining companies, for running companies. You cannot function there. It's not capitalist in any sense. Meritocracy is long gone and is long dead. And the Afrikaner people are fighting back. They're establishing universities, they're establishing communities. Some of you might have heard of Orania, for example, as an independent community that functions without the support of the government because government services, even something as critical as electricity, are simply unreliable. And Dr. Roets is here with a message for us from this country and from his people, and I think that it will dovetail well with the peril that we face, and perhaps we can learn some lessons from how we can persevere. Dr. Ernst Roets.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction. I have to say that we are quite humbled about this opportunity.
And from the club, leading us in the pledge is a good friend of mine, the chairman of the Black Caucus, who helped organize our most recent historic rally in the Bronx for President Trump. Everyone give a warm round of applause to Adam Solis Jr., everybody.
Good evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty.
And this is in a sense an emotional moment for me and for us, because as the Afrikaner people in South Africa, we have pretty much been rejected by not just the international community, but by the West. North America, Western Europe for the last few decades. We have, that's at least our perspective, we felt like we were treated like an unwelcome stepchild. Even though we regard ourselves as Westerners, we have found that many in the West don't regard us as part of the West. And also we've been treated like pariahs for several decades. But that is changing. And we were just blown away by the extent to which we have been welcomed by the New York Young Republicans Club in particular, by our friends in America. We went to the NatCon conference last week, and also to friends in other places in Europe. So as far as South Africa is concerned, the tide is changing. And I want to thank you for your role in this. Now, there's a famous line often attributed to Edmund Burke, so famous that people who have no idea who Edmund Burke was know only this one thing about him, this one line. We have all heard it. It goes like this: "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing." Now, the truth is that Edmund Burke didn't actually say this. He said something else from which this line was extrapolated, but what he actually said is much better. He said, "When bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall, one by one, an unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle." The actual statement has much more depth because it recognizes that there will always be bad men and women, but that these bad men and women become a real threat when they join forces, that there is a difference between good and evil, that some people seek to protect the good while others seek to destroy it, that we are more than individuals, that we will fall one by one if we try to face evil by ourselves, that community and association is a good, and that if we associate, we have the capacity to overcome the fiercest of obstacles. So much has happened in America in the past 2 weeks, and the speakers before me have spoken about this, so I'm not going to try to repeat that. Way too much to mention. We've all seen President Donald Trump being shot, falling to the ground, surrounded by Secret Service agents, getting up again with his fist in the air, calling on his followers to fight. And that obviously is also the theme of tonight. And that is what I want to talk to you about. What are we fighting for? It seems that in our day and age, it has become easier to explain what we are fighting against than what we are fighting for. Yet we can never truly understand what we are fighting against if we don't have clarity about what we are fighting for. When someone asks us who we are, it's not sufficient to say that we are not left or that we are not woke. I'm an Afrikaner. I come from a nation that has lived in the southernmost tip of the African continent for almost 400 years. We are Westerners because we sprout from Western civilization with its foundations in Athens, Rome, and Jerusalem. But we are also African in the sense that our culture and identity has become inextricably linked to the African continent. This is evident in the unique culture and language that we have developed, and the fact that we named our language Afrikaans and our nation the Afrikaners after the African continent. The Afrikaners of the 20th century went through considerable effort to build a strong state. That state was not sustainable for a variety of reasons. And when the state fell, it didn't merely collapse. It was taken over, and the institutions that we have built became weapons used against us. The South African government follows a strategy that they call the National Democratic Revolution, which boils down to using democracy to promote socialism, gaining control of the levers of power under the auspice of being Democrats, only to use this to wage an ideological war on targeted communities. Those in power in South Africa are bold enough to describe their own ideology as a blend of race nationalism and socialism, as if that has not been tried. Yet they have successfully convinced much of the world that they only seek peace and prosperity. Either that, or those who support them don't really care about race nationalism and don't really care about state oppression, as long as it is their preferred race that is targeted and it's their state doing the oppression. Faced with more than 140 race laws in South Africa today, and the collapse of every single government function, except tax collection, of course, the Afrikaner people have rediscovered an ancient truth. This is that the only sustainable road to freedom is through well-functioning community institutions, built on a strong sense of communal identity. We have lost this, but our experience has led us to rediscover these things. America, I might say, it seems, has lost much of this as well. While this has been part of the fabric that has led America to the greatness in its past. If there was only one thing that Thomas Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton agreed on, it might have been this. It is especially evident in the observations made by Alexis de Tocqueville in Democracy in America. And this is where the Afrikaner Foundation comes in. The Solidarity Movement in South Africa is a network of more than 50 institutions aimed at ensuring a future for the Afrikaner people. This includes Solidarity, AfriForum, the Solidarity Helping Hand, the Federation of Afrikaans Cultural Organizations, Academia, Soltech, Barula Media, the Orania Development Company, and many others. We are very proud to say that everything we have achieved over the last few decades was through our own work and funding from within our own community. For example, we were able to build a technical college worth $11 million and finish it under budget and before the deadline. And to build this college, the single biggest donation that we have received was 50 American cents. How did we do this? We crowdfunded hundreds of thousands of people to donate the equivalent of 50 cents every month for several years. However, due to the accelerated deterioration of South Africa, we have to accelerate our own work. And so the Afrikaner Foundation was founded to increase international cooperation for the Afrikaner people and to enable our friends abroad who are interested to support these initiatives, either through institutional cooperation, donations, or, and this is what I would like to encourage you to do, becoming an international member of the Afrikaner Foundation by making a small monthly contribution. Now, as a result of purchasing power parity, the price of 2 cappuccinos in New York is more or less the equivalent of a high-quality steak meal in South Africa, which is yet another reason why you should visit South Africa. So what you might regard as a small contribution would be accepted by us as a big contribution. And so this brings me to America and to the West. There are many things that we as Afrikaners and our friends in New York have in common. We each man a particular outpost on the civilizational battlefront. As Westerners, we draw our conception of freedom and what it means to be free back to Aristotle, who spoke about the movement from potentiality to actuality. That freedom is not something to be demanded as a right, but to be fulfilled within the context of our communities. To Cicero, who spoke about the reciprocal nature of republicanism, that freedom implies receiving certain things as a result of the sacrifices of our ancestors and sacrificing certain things for the sake of our children. And to St. Paul, who called on us to live in the fruits of the Spirit and not in the fruits of the flesh. That freedom implies living virtuously and courageously in the face of animosity. The primary struggle of our day and age is not merely a clash between different civilizations, but in many ways a clash between those who wish to preserve civilization and those who seek to destroy the very concept of civilization, but Western civilization in particular as a primary target. Thus, if we are not prepared to fight for the preservation of civilization, we have to accept barbarism. As Westerners, we believe in transcendence. We believe that we have been called to fulfill a certain duty at a certain time and in a certain place. There is a reason why Gavin Wax was not born in 1760 and why he wasn't one of the founding fathers. It's because we need him to fulfill a certain duty in this place. One that George Washington wasn't called on. And there's a reason why Jack Posobiec wasn't born in 1930 and why he didn't serve as Secretary of the State during the Cold War. It's because we need him to fulfill a certain responsibility at this time and this place. And the same goes for each and every one of us. This is why we have a slogan in Afrikaans that says, "Soet is die stryd," or "Sweet is the fight." The fight is sweet, not because we fight like Achilles for our own glory, but because we fight like Hector, to protect what is rightfully ours, to honor those who came before us, and to leave greatness behind for those who will come after us. And the beautiful part is that we have each been blessed with a unique skill set, which means that each of us has a unique place in this fight. Therefore, we cannot afford to be spectators. Nothing is easier than to stand on the stadium, criticizing those who are out on the field, who are out there doing things in the real world, achieving things, and making mistakes in the process. Our legacy will not be determined by the extent to which we can point out the mistakes of others, nor how few mistakes we make, because the one who wins is rarely the one who makes the fewest mistakes. We need to be out in the field, and we need to be wise and prudent, but yet not allow the fear of making a mistake to hold us back when we are called on. And when we make mistakes, we correct them. But we must not apologize. Because as my colleague Ernst van Zyl, who is here tonight, has remarked, there is no point in apologizing to someone who does not believe in mercy or forgiveness, and who will only use the apology as an admission of guilt and a justification for punishment. This is why we have another saying. Die een wat sy deelname weier is die een wat sy nasie vermoor. It might be translated loosely as, the one who refuses his participation is the one who partakes in diffusing his nation. We need to recognize that we are not simply fighting for an idea. We are often told that the American dream is an idea, when in fact it is much more than that. People are not willing to die for ideas. People die for the actual manifestation of ideas. We will not die for the idea of love, but we will die for the people we love. Leonidas and his 300 Spartans didn't die for the idea of Spartan freedom, but for the actual thing. They knowingly and willingly fought to the death, not for an idea, but for their wives and children, their nation and their community, for the actual manifestation of Spartan freedom. They achieved greatness because they knew exactly what and whom they were fighting for. They fought and died for freedom and for love because they knew the sweet taste of freedom and the captivating feeling of love. South Africa is an outpost on the civilizational battlefront, and so is New York. We need to recognize that bad men and women have already joined forces all over the world, and that they are not interested in discussion or debate. They are acting as a united international front. When they started tearing down statues in South Africa, it was just a matter of time before they started tearing down statues in America. And when they invented critical race theory in America, it was just a matter of time before it was exported to South Africa. And so, if we, the good, don't associate, we will fall one by one. So let us raise the glass tonight to sacrifices already made, to victories already claimed, to honor already acquired, beauty already preserved, and love already discovered. And to a solemn oath to those great people who were here before us, and to our children's children whose achievements will, if God permits, outshadow our own, that we will not stop fighting. There are dark times ahead for South Africa, America, and the West. Perhaps we too shall face a time when we feel overwhelmed and close to despair. But in those moments, we will remember why we fight. To protect what we love and to honor the legacy of those who came before us, who were indeed great. We will stand our ground even against insurmountable odds. We will remain steadfast and unyielding because our resolve is fortified by the pursuit of goodness, the preservation of beauty, and the knowledge that we live honorably, true to our tradition, and inspired by our calling to ensure that the brilliant light of Western civilization will not flicker or dim as long as we live. Thank you very much.
Fantastic speech, Dr. Roets, fantastic. And there is more to come. I'm going to ask the speakers this evening, Dr. Roets, my friend Raheem Kassam, my good friend Jack Posobiec, just to stand over here very briefly. I'm also asking Alex and Haley to come up. We're just going to quickly change the setup here. As a reminder, please direct your questions to one of the speakers. Keep them questions. We don't care about your divorce. We don't care about your mortgage. We don't care about any personal problems you may have. Both. All right. We're all situated or about to be situated. Just show of hands for the first question. Again, just please direct it to one of them. We have a gentleman in the back there.
I thought I had the first question.
I have a question for Jack Posobiec. Okay, I guess I got to stand up. So I was listening to your podcast with Tucker Carlson today when I was at work, and you brought up the Leviathan a couple of times, and then again today. I would have Googled it, but I was working in Excel spreadsheets, and I didn't take the time to Google it. So would you mind telling me the analogy there and how it applies to politics today?
Sure, thank you. Great question. And so the thing that we are all facing, and Dr. Roets talked about this as well, is it really is this sort of global, interconnected group of individuals, organizations, and institutions that, for lack of a better term, have been able to exert actual control over national parties, over national governments, in many cases in terms of even national elections and policies. One of us on the stage was able to do a little bit of work to remove his nation from such an institution. That's Raheem Kassam, when he worked with Nigel Farage on Brexit to restore the sovereignty, they're getting there, but restore at least partially the sovereignty of the United Kingdom out of the globalist enterprise that is the European Union. And this is, of course, the forum through which this blob, and different people have different names for it, presents itself in Europe. So if you listen to Mike Benz, he might call it the blob. If you listen to Vivek Ramaswamy, he might just say the machine. If you listen to others, they'll say the deep state. People say the permanent state, the permanent managerial class. Curtis Yarvin will say the cathedral. And honestly, I had never even used the word Leviathan before that Tucker Carlson podcast, and it just sort of came to me in the moment to just call it like I see it. And there's, of course, a biblical reference. There's, in Greek philosophy, the phrase is also used, the Leviathan. And what I mean, though, also by Leviathan is that something lurks beneath the surface. Something very powerful that lurks beneath the surface that is actually controlling things. Do you really think that Joe Biden voluntarily dropped out of the race? Does anyone actually think that? Is anyone actually so dumb as to think that that's what happened? No, it was very obvious that and we found out what, by the way, what the leverage was. It was the Hur tapes. It was the Robert Hur tapes that they wouldn't release when Nancy Pelosi gives that comment to Politico that says we can do this the easy way or the hard way. The hard way was, they said, we have these tapes of you with Robert Hur. It will destroy you. It will destroy your legacy. It will bring everything down. We will release those if you don't drop out. He drops out on Sunday. And what do the very next day? They release the transcripts of the tapes anyway because these people are ruthless.
By the way, you can call it the blob, you can call it all sorts of things. I have a favorite 4-letter word that begins with C that I'm not allowed to say.
Raheem, I keep telling you, that means something different here. That's a slightly different, and again, remember, it's
you know how you
cigarettes and.
You know how you call them rhinos here, right? We call them conservatives under nominal terms. So we'll leave it there.
So we were joking before we came up that I got to see Hulk Hogan rip his shirt off a couple of days ago for the first time in my life, by the way, at the RNC. And I said, man, I'm living so high off of that. And then I come here tonight and I say, great, now I get to see Raheem Kassam has ripped his shirt off. Kind of a step down, but we'll get there.
All right, next question.
Thank you. This is mostly for Ernst, but I would like Jack to also follow up on this. Recently, the Wall Street Journal published a rather fascinating phrase called gay race communism. And, when I saw it, it was rather shocking, but it also got me to think about the ANC back in South Africa, who are open, avowed communists, but undergirded by this kill the Boer anti-white sentiment. And I was wondering, what do you think about the awareness amongst, just people globally or even in America? Jack, maybe you could speak to it, about this unhuman phenomenon where there might be sort of an intertwining of anti-white hate and Marxist ideals, right? And so I was wondering, what do you think the awareness, Ernst, is amongst those folks in South Africa that these things might be intertwined going forward or always have been? But this gay race communism or this idea that anti-white hate and Marxist ideals are intertwined, what do you think the awareness is of that?
Well, let me just start by making a quick remark. I recently met a journalist from France. Thank you. I recently met from France, a young lady who joined, I think, 4 of these leftist groups for 6 months. She became a member and she was actively involved with the activities. And the one was some LGBT group, the other one was an Islamist group, the other one was Antifa, and I can't remember the 4th one. And I'm not sure if her story has been published. I think it was published in French. And so I asked her, she went to South Africa to do a story about South Africa, and so we spoke about her experience, and it was very clear that these organizations are completely irreconcilable if you consider what they actually say to believe in. So we have these women's rights groups, and you have Islamists, and they join forces, and they fight together. And so I asked her as an insider who spent 6 months in these organizations, how is this possible? Do they fight, or what's happening in these meetings? And she said, actually, it's very easy for them to work together because it's not so much about the things that they actually claim to stand for. It's about the things that they want to destroy. And so they agree. They agree that they hate men, and they agree that they hate white men in particular. And so it's very easy for them and they agree that they hate Western civilization and it has to be destroyed. So the fact that they cannot reconcile on a theoretical basis is irrelevant. And so I never thought that I would say this, but one of the great things about the ANC in South Africa is that they've gotten a free pass for decades because it's the party of Nelson Mandela, so they thought that they can do and say whatever they want. And one of the consequences thereof is that they have went through considerable effort the last few decades to write all their policy ideas up, to publish it on their website. So you can find the most bizarre things on their website where they explain, like what I mentioned in the speech, them saying our ideology is a blend of race, nationalism, and socialism. That's on their own website. And so the other thing is they talk about this national democratic revolution I mentioned, and it's very interesting, and it's written out. It's not a conspiracy theory, it's on their own website. They say our strategy, that's what they said in the 90s, is to pretend that we are liberal so that the world can support us when we know that we are communists. And we know that our goal is to promote communism. And when we get this international approval, we can get control of the state, and then we can move, that's how they say, we can move to the second phase of the revolution. And so the first phase is just getting control of the government and pretending to be much more moderate than you actually are. And once you get control, and that's about 5 or 10 years ago, they even wrote a paper called The Second Transition, in which they said, we now have control, now we need to go to the second phase. But again, there are a lot of people out there who, even if they encounter this information, they simply wouldn't care because they are so hell-bent on destroying that they don't really care what these people actually stand for.
There's not much I can add to that other than what the very importance of Dr. Roets' speech, and I want everyone to take to heart what he said, and please go and purchase his book after you've purchased mine. That
it's not buy one, get one free.
You think Gavin's going to give everyone a discount? Come on, look at this guy. He's got a baby to feed coming up here. That and by the way, Chelsea is here. By the way, let's give it a round. Oh, there she is. There you guys moved on me. You moved on me for the engagement that was ordered by President Trump. By the way, just a few months ago.
That's right.
That talk about a shotgun wedding. Look, South Africa is 30 years ahead of us, okay? South Africa has DEI and wokeism and all of this written into their very constitution. And it has led to a situation where now they have, how many hours a day do you guys have power?
It differs, but we have had days where there was 12 hours without electricity in South Africa.
Sometimes you have 12 hours without electricity. They call it load shedding, where this is how bad things have gotten, that we think CrowdStrike goes down for a couple of days, but it'll be fine. Every aircraft in America suddenly grounded because of an issue. Well, guess what? Those, bridges in Baltimore destroyed because a ship crashes directly into them. We're starting to see the signs of it. Boeing 737s falling out of the sky. Has anyone tried to take a trip with a connecting flight in the last 2 years? You can't do it anymore. No, she's exactly right. I won't do it. You can't do it. These basic things are the way that it slowly slides into gay race communism, as Vish so put it. By the way, for sure, Vish, you've never heard that phrase before you saw it in the austere pages of the Wall Street Journal, which you read every morning, right? Of course, never, no. And of course, it was quoting one of Vish's many alt accounts, I'm sure. And the point being that what it really is that after the fall of the Soviet Union, the communists realized that, okay, this Marxism, Das Kapital stuff isn't working anymore. There's too much middle class. The free market it's just too strong. It's too powerful. It's too obvious. So we've got to find another way to divvy up society. How do we divvy up society into tribes, get the tribes to fight each other, or get all of the tribes, as you're saying, to unite against our one main enemy, white Christian men? And of course, that what you do is you turn to sociology. So you turn to gender, you turn to race, you turn to ethnicity, you turn to religion. By the way, on the subject of gender, you start even creating your own genders and creating new genders so you can fight for their rights. This is the same thing that we saw under communism and in terms of economics. And so now, when we've seen, how the communists got started in Russia, it was the Bolsheviks pushing out the more moderate Mensheviks. And so I thought at first that, well, we've got, this guy who's at least the face of a moderate running for president, but with all the radicals working for him. Well, folks, what can I say? Just like the Bolsheviks before them, now we have a gay race communist who has pushed out the Menshevik who was standing in her way, and she is running for president.
Yeah. By the way, I saw this article. I saw this article. I saw it mention gay race communism. I thought they were just referring to Hell's Kitchen. So yeah.
Hi, thanks. So I'm actually South African. I've been here 13 years and find myself much more aligned with Republicans than anything else. I wanted to ask you, we've lived through such a change in our country where we've basically seen it destroyed and become a failed state. Yeah. We're not even sure if we'll ever turn it around, maybe not in our lifetimes. But America is at a pivotal point in its history where it has maybe the last chance that it can to stem what's happening. What would you share with the audience as the lessons that you've learned, as the things that maybe South Africans could have done to have stopped what happened? Thanks.
Thank you. Well, that's a heavy question, and it's good to see. So, I think one is, we found a lot of people, and unfortunately we still see it to an extent, although people have become disillusioned very quickly in South Africa, that even while things are falling apart around you, you will always find people, and unfortunately, especially in the media, and especially politicians, obviously, who will do as much as they can to convince you that it's not that bad, and that if you raise concern about this, then you are the problem. And if you say that it's not working, then somehow there's something wrong with your mentality and you are either racist or whatever. And so we've had that a lot, and a lot of people have been beaten into submission by that. But it's very interesting how it only went up to a point where I think in South Africa, at least among our community, it's not really a thing anymore. I think people have woken up. People in the good sense of the word, not in the woke sense of the word. That, and then I think there are a few things. One is how the universities have been taken over in South Africa. It's bizarre, some of the stories. To such an extent, I mean, I can tell you many stories, and I know many of these things you have in America as well. One story is, at one university, they banned having conversations in Afrikaans. So you were not allowed to speak Afrikaans with your friend outside in your residence room. They said you're not allowed to do that. If they hear you speaking that language, you're going to get a fine. And fortunately, we were able to turn that around. But there's stuff like that. And then one of the bizarre things in South Africa is, many of you have heard of this guy called Julius Malema, who is famous for chanting, "Kill the Boer, kill the farmer." Now, he has made many such comments. One comment was, he made a speech and he said to his followers, "I am not calling for the slaughter of white people, at least for now." And then at a later event, he actually said, yeah, he might one day do that, but at least for now, he's not calling on people to do that. And so he was taken to the South African Human Rights Commission, and you know what they found? The Human Rights Commission found that what Should we swap again? Hello, there we go. So they found that what he had... Just speak loud. No. All right, thank you. So they found that what he had said, thank you, is not hate speech. And the reason why it's not hate speech is because he is black. And so they said in the ruling that you have to consider the race of the person who is accused in determining what the outcome of the proceedings has to be. And so it has gotten as bizarre as that. And so if the question is what should people be concerned about, we've heard a lot of talk about immigration and protecting the border, but we had the NatCon conference the other day. It was an incredible conference in Washington. But the fact of the matter is, if you have the best conferences and the best meetings and the best parties, but you lose on demographics, then you lose. That's the fact of the matter. And I think the fact of demographics it's a very controversial or politically incorrect thing to talk about, but it's extremely important. And people don't recognize that until it's too late.
I'll throw just really quick, I'm not going to do a soliloquy, but in kind of getting back to the Leviathan thing, that a lot of people ask me what I meant by that, but I think more importantly what I was trying to say was, you would not see them revealing themselves. You would not see this great beast rising up and revealing its true power if they were winning. They're only doing that because we are winning. That's why they're fighting the way they are. They're reverting to raw, naked power now, locking up political opponents, assassination attempts where we'll see, because I think the jury's still out on the question of negligence versus complicity. And we are not going to let Butler, PA go away.
Hi, thank you so much to the New York Republicans Club, and thank you so much to you gentlemen for attending tonight. I am a brand new Republican as of last year. I cast my last vote as an independent in 2023, and then the day after I went to my County Board of Elections and changed my registration, and I'm trying to get more involved and more educated. My question is to Dr. Roets. I just actually, in June, I had a road trip across America with my friend from the UK, who, by the way, is Muslim, and she and her mother covers. And she had heard so many things about how terrible America is because of firearms and this, that, the other. But as we crossed America, she said, this is such a friendly place. I wanted to ask you specifically, Mr. Roets, and you as well, because we compared specifically violent crime statistics. Actually, per capita, in America, they're lower than the UK, even though your weapons laws are more restrictive. I wanted to ask you if you feel for South Africa, because things were allowed to be so segregated, if that was the mechanism for things to be taken over, that mechanism of the communist government. And also I wanted to ask you about the BRICS alliance. South Africa is the S in BRICS, and American fiscal policy, and how that affects the Western world and South Africa. Thank you.
I just want to make sure the first part of the question, is it about gun laws and how it has affected the transition in South Africa?
Individual liberties?
Yes.
And right to defend yourself.
Well, I think So this is the strange thing, this national democratic revolution I mentioned, and them presenting themselves as liberal and Democrats, is the way to do this was to put a very strong emphasis on individual liberty and individual freedom. And so the South African Constitution was applauded all over the world when it came out as one of the best and most modern constitutions in the world, because it has all these individual rights, including an individual right to a healthy environment and all of these things. Yes, yeah, but that's it. And so there's an important point. So the Constitution says in Section 2...
What are you doing to these microphones? It's the accent, yeah.
Yeah.
Wait a minute, they both have accents. I'm the only American up here.
Something's wrong with...
He's speaking in Afrikaner.
Maybe I'm holding
again.
it wrong.
The hate language.
Yeah, I think someone has hacked the system. And so the
I think CrowdStrike is running the microphones in here, by the way.
So the South African Constitution says in Section 2 that it's the highest authority in the land. There's nothing has more authority than the Constitution. But that's not true, because the Constitution still has to be interpreted. So whoever gets to interpret the Constitution has the highest authority in the land. And so the Constitution says, here's a good example. The Constitution says in Section 25 in South Africa that you have a right to own private property, and that the government cannot expropriate your property unless it's in the public interest. Now, I think the Western view of public interest would be something like they're building a highway, and the house is in the road, in the way, and they don't want to build a highway like this, or there's some military emergency. Now, if you ask some people in government in South Africa what is public interest, they would say the color of your skin determines whether it's public interest to take your property. And so we have this incredible constitution that's been applauded by many people, incredible in quotation marks, but at the end of the day, the question is, how is it interpreted? And it's not interpreted as a liberal document in which everyone has individual freedom, and Jack has mentioned this as well. The way it's interpreted is, and our courts has declared there's been many cases on this, declaring that, well, if you actually interpret the Constitution correctly, then you will see that it actually says that we should have systemic race discrimination against minority communities. So it's very serious. In terms of gun laws,
CrowdStrike is at it again.
Where's your right to free speech, huh? Is it going through about 8 microphones now?
Yeah.
Is Vladimir Zelensky back there, like, pulling the plug every time?
So it's much more difficult to get a gun in South Africa than America, but it's very easy to get an illegal gun. It's very easy to get an AK-47 in South Africa. You just have to go to the right people in the right township, and you can get one. And so this thing about having stricter gun laws You have the debate in America more than anywhere else, but South Africa is also a good example of how the consequence thereof is you have so many illegal firearms, you have the wrong people having guns, and the right people find it very difficult to get firearms.
Can I ask you a question on that real quick? Because something that, and I want to make sure the audience, talk to us a little bit about who are the types of people that want to have these firearms for self-defense, and what are some of the things that they face on a regular basis in your country?
We have a, through Forum, and my colleague Ernst is here. I'll just speak loudly and see if you can hear me. But, just turn it off. It goes on and off. There we go.
There you go.
It's like this.
Take mine, Hold on, we'll just stand here.
Yeah. We'll do the, it's Lennon and McCarthy.
Yeah. So AfriForum, which many of you know, it has we say that there are actually three spheres. People tend to think of the public sphere and the private sphere when it comes to safety. And the public sphere, you pay taxes to the government, so the government's supposed to keep you safe through the police. Now, what happens if the government doesn't do that? Then the next step is to go to the private sphere, which is private security. Now, in South Africa, currently, there are more private security guards than the police and the army combined. And so we have a joke in South Africa that says if you want to get rich in South Africa, if you want to make money, you should look at what is the government supposed to do, and then you start a business to do that, such as private security. And so in a sense, we're not really that afraid of the government anymore, because private security is bigger than the police and the army. But there's a third sphere, and we've seen how important this is, and that's the community sphere. So private sphere is private security companies. Community sphere is something along the lines of a neighborhood watch, but the way we do it is almost like neighborhood watch 2.0, in the sense that it's linked to a private security company. They are properly armed, they are properly trained, they have self-defense courses. There's some very exciting videos about these community safety structures doing actual training, shooting with guns and doing self-defense training and so forth. They have equipment, so they drive patrols. They have radios where they communicate with each other as they drive patrols. And it's ordinary people. It's a lawyer or a teacher or a doctor who at night they go out and they drive patrol to keep their community safe. And they have a timetable. And there are so many examples. In one case, in a town called Elliot, the stock theft went down by about 97% when this community initiative started, when they started driving patrols. And there are many such examples, and I can tell you many stories of how farm attackers in South Africa were caught and arrested, not by the police, but by community safety structures. And I myself, I don't want to tell the whole story now, but I think I told the story last time when I was at the clubhouse about a year ago. I think it was a year ago, a year ago. I was... my family was in an armed robbery, and it was a very, very serious incident. Someone was shot and killed right in front of me holding my son, who's 2 years old, and my oldest son, it was his 10th birthday. And so we were standing there and we saw the guy shot and killed in front of us. As we were lying under the table, we heard the guns shooting. It was in a restaurant. I knew immediately that don't call the police. You can call the police later, but the police aren't going to show up. So I knew the best and the quickest way to get people to respond was to call the community safety structure. And so I just sent a WhatsApp to the AfriForum group, and I said, help, armed robbery, and I sent the location. And I immediately knew. I got a text back that said, on our way. And then I tried to call the police, and it just kept ringing, and there was no answer. And so within 5 minutes, the community safety was there, and about an hour and a half later when we left, the police have still not shown up. So I think this is one of we say South Africa is ahead of the curve in terms of the problems, but we do believe that in terms of the solutions, we might also be, in the sense that we really want to see this trend happening in much of the rest of the world as well, where people start focusing on community solutions and not just private security or private solutions.
Just to add to that really quickly as well, on the point of natural born rights and I think about this all the time, is that mine was the nation of Magna Carta. And when Her late Majesty the Queen passed away, I flew over to England, and I was staying at a hotel out in Windsor because I went to visit the tomb at Windsor Castle. And one of the other things I wanted to do while I was there, and I wonder if anybody in this room has done it also, was go to Runnymede, where Magna Carta was signed. Has anybody been there to Runnymede? Right, let me tell you something. There you go. Well, you don't count, you live there. Let me tell you something. The only statue, the only monument, the only marker to Magna Carta at Runnymede is built by the American Bar Association. Our own country, our own nation, our own government cannot be bothered to commemorate, celebrate, recognize the rights that were not just fought for, but that are owed, that are God-given to all of us, right? And you're absolutely right to point out the distinction in violent crime, the distinction in what goes on in our day-to-day lives. And I once got in a lot of trouble, some of you may have seen it on YouTube, but you know, Sky News of the UK had me on one time, and I was trying to talk to them about crime statistics in London. And it's just falling on deaf ears, falling on deaf ears, falling on deaf ears. Stats and facts and anecdotes and everything. And I got so frustrated by the end of it, I may have had a few drinks the night before. But I got so frustrated by the end of it that I just said, you know what? To quote Donald Trump, Sadiq Khan is turning London into a shithole. And they said, I think we better leave it there. Working on it.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. My question's for Raheem. You know, we celebrated a win with the establishment of the Reform Party in Parliament and Nigel Farage, as you say. But we know, unfortunately, that the Labour Party ultimately took over Parliament. So my question is, you know, how do you feel about that? What does that mean for the UK over the next few years, and Europe, and ultimately the West?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one I hear every day at the moment, and thank you for it. The British political equation is very much like yours in that, you know, people think that you may just have to swing between one party or t'other, right? And so after 14 years of rhino leadership in Parliament, and by the way, the UK Conservative Party has governed to the left of when the Labour Party left office in 2010. Mass migration, all-time high. Inflation, all-time high. Taxation, all-time high. Morale, nationally, all-time low. Okay? And so, and believe me, I stood there outside Westminster Hall when David Cameron announced the election campaign in 2020, and I was a paid-up member of the Conservative Party at the time. And then he goes into governing coalition with the Liberal Democrats, and he gives them everything they want in governing coalition. Why? Because the Conservative Party is a Liberal Democrat party at its core. And so what you're seeing now is that last throes of the British public endorsing, you know, not very well endorsing, by the way, because the Labour Party got fewer votes this time around than it did when it lost in 2019. So it's not a full-throated endorsement, but it is a dying endorsement of a majority two-party system. And listen, if the British electorate wants to go through, and clearly it does, 4 or 5 more years of a Tony Blair World Economic Forum style leadership under this gormless man, I don't even know about if he identifies as a man, Sir Keir Starmer, then they're welcome to it. And they're welcome to see what it brings. And today they came out and said, oh, we didn't have the right numbers on the finances throughout the campaign. Actually, we're going to have to immediately raise your taxes. The public purse needs it. Well, they are in for a terrible, terrible time. But guess what? The Conservative Party will now fight itself until November. They have a leadership election to figure out which rhino is going to lead them into the next election. And all the while, Nigel Farage, I often slip, I have a Freudian slip from time to time, because I worked for him under UKIP. I say Nigel Farage and UKIP, but actually it's Nigel Farage and the Reform Party will continue to build and build in that point since. And I commend, go and watch his maiden speech today in Parliament. It's up on YouTube, it's up on his social media channels. It really is, like you have in this country, a split screen between the left and right, a split screen between, you know, the working class, populist nationalists, and the effete elites of Washington, D.C., and unfortunately here too. Go and watch that speech and tell me who is going to be the real opposition in 4 or 5 years' time.
I think we're going to end it there on questions, but our speakers are going to be hanging out. Jack is going to be signing books in the back.
I have 3 quick questions for the audience. 3 quick questions for all of you guys out here. Are you ready to fight? Are you ready to win? Are you ready to go to the bar and become unburdened by what has been?
We love it. We love it. With that, head up to the bar, head up to the pub, get food, get drinks. We will be up there. Sign your books, buy your books, and let's give another round of applause for these fantastic speakers.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Good night.
Thank you,
Oh, and board members, get up here in caucus chairs, and all you people. Yeah. Board members up front, thank you.
You're always great. Where do I?
Just gonna grab a quick picture really fast with everyone. We could probably just head over here.